Good mid-morning. This is a beautiful day in my location. The sun has come out and it's been a little rainy for the last week or so during the holidays. And it's a nice change to have some crisp weather and clean air and sunshine, even though we usually have that here. But I just like to welcome it after a long week last week in the Thanksgiving holiday of being mostly wet and dreary. I'm doing this video about another movie that I watched, which is an interesting movie, and I will be only talking about one character in this movie. It actually was a documentary, and this character is a woman who is part of the Hasidic Jewish community who has some unfortunate issues in her life. To start with, she's very young. She's probably 30, 32 years old, and she has 7 children. And she described how she met her husband and how they set up her marriage, which is pretty much very traditional in the sect that she's in. It works out for a lot of the people there. So, I wouldn't say that that's the wrong way to set up a marriage or anything, but their logic explains it all. You just meet someone, you don't want to date multiple times with multiple men, you just want to meet the man that is supposed to be for you, that God picks for you, and that's it. And then the community sets it up so that you can get a beautiful marriage and start having children as soon as possible. And these ladies are usually married pretty young, probably at the oldest 18 years old, because your fertility rate and your energy level at that age is at its highest. So you definitely want to take advantage of that and produce the children that you can. And if you're fortunate, you can have up to 10 or 15 children if you're healthy. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit. But to make this scenario short, this young lady has the unfortunate experience of having a so-called abusive husband. Now, they set the marriage up. And unfortunately, the husband is not capable of handling the amount of responsibilities that are engaged in a household with 7 children. But it's interesting how you have 7 children over 7 or 8 years to keep having children, and you're figuring out this relationship's not working out. Now, in certain communities, they don't believe in divorce. They don't believe in being able to depart, break up families, and all of that. But that's not true in this community. They allow for separations based on their assessment of it and their ability to help you once you are separated, how to help the rest of the family. But what ends up happening with this young lady is she's supposedly in the fold or the community. And that means any religious community, such as a Mennonite, Amish, what other community that are very self-sufficient, that don't depend on outside government or any other type of help to maintain their community. They have their own businesses, they have their own health care, they have their own schools, they have their own, babysitting services, nursing services, medical services, everything. You're in a community that is self-sufficient, pretty much 100%. So this young lady is in a community that can take good care of her. And based on what I've seen in a lot of those communities, those women are well taken care of. I mean, they can have 15 children and look like they're 20. Really. And it's because they go through spiritual ritual baths They take good care of them. They get them medical help if they need it. They don't have to work a job 40 hours a week. They can stay home with their kids. They can cook and clean and everything, but they have plenty of help. They can hire people to help these women. So it's not like they're in drudgery 24 hours a day and suffering. Yes, they have to make their commitments and sacrifices to play a role, but they get a lot of assistance and they're well taken care of. And a lot of religious communities do that for their women. Not just this particular community, but many of them do. And that's what they fail to tell people. They just say, oh, well, these women are so tortured and the patriarch is taken totally over them. They have no control of themselves. They're beaten and mistreated and blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe some of them are. But the point is, if that many of them were having that many problems, their community would not be thriving like it is. I'm just saying. Okay, so back to the narrative of the story. This lady decides, well, I'm going to leave the community. I'm going to go out into the real world out there, the ugly one, in New York City, mind you. Now, I don't know anybody in New York City who can afford to live there and not work. This lady did not have any ability to get out and have a reasonable profession that would pay her well enough to live in a place that would support her and her children. Obviously, an apartment in New York can range $3,000 on up. Is she going to be able to earn that kind of money? And of course, she's going to need room for kids. So we're talking about an efficiency apartment for $2,000 or $3,000. So what's in a place that she's going to be able to stay that can fit 7 children? Okay, let's move on. So she leaves the community thinking that she's going to make it on her own. And then supposedly her relatives and her husband's relatives are coming through there watching her. They're actually stalking her, beating down the door, trying to get her to give up the kids. Let us take the kids. You're not going to be able to do this out here. We're taking these kids. And she went to court, and the court won in the man's favor that he took the kids, and the kids were dispersed among relatives to take care of, because, of course, he didn't have another wife yet. Well, seems to me this young lady did not think out everything reasonably. She didn't realize how much it costs to go out there on those mean streets with 7 children. I don't understand why you would leave a community that does everything for you. I think that's being very ungrateful. It's being selfish. And to be honest, I don't feel sorry for her. And the women's lib thing ain't going to work in this argument, okay? She's not liberated. No woman with 7 children is going to be liberated, folks. Your obligation is to those children and whoever helped you have those children, okay? Because there's no way you're going to do it by yourself. And when you get married into a family and a community, and that's why, because you need support to help take care of your babies. What is the point in taking care of yourself, and you think that you can do children the same way by having them wait for you to come back home from work while they're all by themselves, or they may have to go to school and so forth? What are you going to do? You have left your community. Your children are not going to fit into another school system, because the school system that those kids were in was already in a certain school system that helped them. And some of those kids weren't even old enough to be in school. You see what I'm saying? So why would you be walking away? Look, here was the answer. If your husband's whipping your behind, why don't you go to your daddy or his daddy and straighten it out? You don't have to call. Do you know that in their community, you're not allowed to call the police on them? You're not allowed to call the police on another Hasidic Jew. If they're not allowed to do that. They only can handle their stuff in their own community. Now, wouldn't it be nice if black people treated each other like that? Not call the cops on you for every little thing just to have you killed? Or put in jail for some ridiculous amount of time that doesn't make any sense? But that's neither here nor there. This lady had an opportunity to be well taken care of. Well taken care of. Yes, she had 7 children, and she was 32 years old. You're not going to tell me that a 32-year-old woman with 7 children is going to do okay by herself. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm team family, okay? Those people were able to help her with her family. They took those kids and they said, you could see the kids, okay, once an hour or whatever. Once you start getting any city or government situation involved with monitoring your children, it's a done deal. It's ruined. So what they did, they went to the court system that helped them out, issued, the ability for her to see her children only once a week for 1 hour. Now, she gave up all that without thinking. I'm sure she could have sought guidance through her mother, through other people in her community, since they're very well equipped and well financed as well. Yeah, you got to take that into consideration because she can't work and make the money. I mean, come on. Nothing's free in this world. And if you combine your efforts to have a child, both parents are responsible for those children. You don't get to walk away and say, well, I'm going to exclude you. And that's a parent too. Because you not only married that person, you married their family. So maybe their family can help. And in that community, that's what they do. That's why the community is thriving. And other people's are not. Because they watch out for themselves. They don't let outsiders come in there and interfere with their business either. I think we could learn a few lessons from that. So if you have a moment, watch the movie One of Us. I think it's really a fascinating movie. There's a lot of accolades in that movie. You have to really pay close attention to the different people in there. I'm just describing one individual with one situation. But there are several situations in that movie where the people are not satisfied with the community there and they want to quote unquote divest. And here's the interesting thing about divesting from those communities. You divest, you can't come back. You cannot. As a matter of fact, they'll tell you if you do come back, you are going to sit at the far end of the table and you will get what we choose to give you this time. You had first bid at first. But since you went out of your way to try to infiltrate our community with outside evil forces, you have to sit at the end of the table. We're not taking you back. And if we do, it's going to be under very strict circumstances, even stricter than when you had it when you were here. Yeah. Now, I'm not a big fan of being in a very restrictive space. I have to admit, personally, not me. But like I said, you're born into that life. You make a decision. They give you a chance to make decisions. Now, you may be too young to know what your decisions ought to be, and that's part of the problem. The young people are just too young. They don't know what to do. But by the time they find out this isn't working, it's too late. They've already made a commitment to have a family. And other men in this particular movie, One of Us, they walked away from their family too and left their woman with their 2 children, or how many children they had at the moment. They started having kids and said, oh boy, I got to go. Okay, that's not right. And then the community tells them, you know what? You stuck us with your responsibility because you weren't willing to stay here and stick it out. Now we're not gonna take you back. And don't bring nobody else back here neither. No. You don't get to bring the what do they call us? I don't know. But we're outsiders. We're not part of their community, for what it's worth. So you don't get to leave their community and bring something else back, and they just let them come on in to just stir up everything. You know what I'm saying? Not to mention pass their wealth to them. Oh no, they're not doing it. So yeah, I can understand that may seem too exclusive, too prejudiced, or whatever the case may be. But the point of it is they're trying to maintain their strength as a community, and they have logic behind it. So yeah, that's my take on it. This young lady who left all those kids, 7 children, y'all. And she could have been having more because they have kids until they can have no more. And understandably so, because their population is dwindling, as you know. So they want to continue to populate. That's what it's biblical to them. They populate the earth and everything else. But anyway, the lady was going to take 7 of her kids and run off. To where? Tell me where, please. I mean, that's just impractical. And it was youth talking. She didn't know. I'm sure somebody tried to warn her, and as youths do, they don't like to listen to advice. Well, you just learn the hard way then. I say this. If you're in a community that is restrictive and you have made decisions that lock you into that community, you got to stick it out. And then when you want your freedoms, there's ways to get those freedoms. That's why that community is really not a cult. Because a cult won't let you out. They will let you out. They'll let you out, but you got to do it a certain way. And I'm sure they have the information because they have a lot of education. They train them through school. They have advice through their close relatives. They're very close-knit families. So you mean to tell me she didn't know? I don't believe it. I don't believe it. So, if you're selfish and you're only thinking of yourself, you get what you get. You get it, and that's that. So it's a lesson learned. It's something that I think everyone should take into consideration before they went off and make rash decisions. And no, she should not have stayed and been beaten up by her husband. That's not what I said at all. But the community will take care of it, believe me. They don't let those men beat those women up. What does that look like? Huh? They know better. And she probably knew better. So anyway, that's my synopsis of the movie called One of Us. It's a Netflix special. I think it's a very interesting community learning movie. It's very applicable to everybody, I think, because you know what? If we took initiative to be more committed, we'd have a very powerful community. And you could see the power that they have by being able to maintain their community that well. I think there's something to be said. They should get that respect for being able to do that. So thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this. And I will be bringing on more topics. Thanks for listening to Where's the Beef?